We are a go. Hello, this is Yogadork's podcast. My name is Jay Brown. If you're a new listener, welcome. If you are returning, thank you very much. I really appreciate everybody listening. Today is a momentous day for the podcast because it is the 1-year anniversary since I started it. It was on August 15th, 2015 that I posted the very first episode to the feed. And those of you who know anything about podcasting know what that means. There's a feed. And so the very first time I ever posted an episode to the Yoga Talks podcast feed was on August 15th, 2015. It didn't actually go out to the public for another week, but that is the very day that this podcast began. And today is its year anniversary. And I'm very happy about how the year's gone for the most part. I think I started out a little rocky. Those of you who were around since the beginning know. There's all these disclaimers on everything because I just feel like I didn't have my feet under me with it. And then I think I leveled out some. Things started to go a lot better with the podcast. And then those of you who've been listening recently know I kind of got into a critical mode, but I also think that was just about wanting to get better and wanting to refine what I'm doing with it more. And when I look back at the roster of people who've been on and the conversations, I'm very psyched. I think it's been going great, and I'm going to keep doing it. And I got a couple of emails since last week from people who were specifically saying that they felt that it was really educational, and I really appreciate that. I don't really set out to be an educator here on this podcast, but my hope is that the conversations are illuminating that we learn from them. So thank you so much, especially everybody who's been with me since the beginning, but everybody else who's been showing up, thank you so much. And I'm excited to bring you some more and interesting guests. Today's guest is Jennilyn Carson, and she is the person behind Yogadork. I don't know if those of you listening know Yogadork, but it's a blog site, and it's really been, since the beginning, I think, a place for people to find out about stuff that's going on in the yoga world. Those of you know that's a topic of mine. I'm interested in that. That's because I think I came into my adulthood in the yoga profession as it was forming. And so much of me and my life is tied into it. And so when I first started writing blog posts, and Jennilyn and I talk about this, I was looking for places to put it, and Yogadork was one of those places. And over the years, I think she's really been there kind of riding the wave of yoga in the mainstream, even to the point where Yogadork sometimes becomes a source when mainstream media outlets are looking for stories on yoga or comments on stories that are yoga related. They will look to Jennilyn and Yogadork for comment. And that's interesting. She started it before yoga was something that the mainstream was even interested in. And she became a source as that happened. So I think she has a really interesting perspective, and she's just not somebody who puts herself out there so much publicly. We talk about that too. So it was a little bit of work, but we finally sat down together, and it's just a great conversation for me personally because it's one of those where I have an opportunity through this podcast to connect with someone who is already my friend, but I don't get a chance to connect with like that normally. And it's special and meaningful to me for that reason. And I'm just real happy that I got to have this time with Jennilyn. And I'm happy to share it with you. And in honor of the year anniversary of the podcast and my talk with Jennilyn, we're offering a promo code. If you go to jbrownyogavideo.com and use promo code Yogadork, you can get 15% off the practice videos and the online course. So that's jbrownyogavideo.com, promo code Yogadork for 15% off. What else? Maybe just a quick little bit of update after my podcast last time with Pamela Tanner Bowl. Very nice responses. Thank you, guys. I appreciate that. Those of you who reached out to me to tell me about how you left the city and found a great life outside of the city, I really do appreciate that. It's certainly something my wife and I have been talking about for the first time in a real way. Like just last night, actually, we had a serious conversation about what it would mean for us to leave Brooklyn. And we haven't decided to do that yet, but it's definitely on the table in a way that it's never been on the table before. And really, I think we're open to it, but we don't know where to go. We don't have like a clear destination, and that makes me worried. I like to feel like I know what I'm going to or the direction I'm going in. I don't want to just leave here. That doesn't make sense to me. So I don't know. I guess I'm telling you that because I'm wondering, what are the great places out there? Where do you live? You who are listening to the podcast today. Do you really like where you live? Is it a place where you feel connected to your community? Is it like affordable to live there? And is there opportunities for work? Is there a place for me? That sounds so cheesy. Is there a place for me there? I don't know. So I guess the plan is to do some traveling, see some places. And I've been trying to do that. I've been trying to use my teaching as an opportunity to see places I've never been. And I mentioned last week that I am doing a bit of traveling. Let me mention it again. I also realized last week I did not include some of the international travel that I get to do. For some reason, it just didn't occur to me that actually there's a lot of people who listen to this podcast who do not live in my country, who live in other countries. So I should mention all of them. So here's a list. I am going to be in Japan, actually, at the end of this month, August 26th through September 4th. And it's a training, but there's a couple of public workshops. You can look it up. Japan, I'll be there at the end of the month. Then I'm going to be in Finland, actually, October 5th through 10th at a place called Studio Yin. And then I'm going to be, as I mentioned, in Falls Church, Virginia at the Yogi Underground on Sunday, October 23rd. I'm going to be in Somerville, Massachusetts at Bow Street Yoga on November 13th. Those dates are all on the website now. They weren't on the website when I announced it last week, but they are all there now, I'm happy to say. That's at jbrownyoga.com. You can go to the in-person page, and there's those dates. All right, that's the business at hand. You can also email me, email me if you think you know a good place for me to relocate my family, my business. Maybe you would let me know what that place is. I'm still reserving the right to stay here in Brooklyn, It's still possible. We could still make it work here if we want. But I like that we're opening it up, seeing what's possible, being curious, not furious, right, from last week. All right, I think that's enough, my friends. Let's go ahead and listen to my talk with Jennilyn.
I'm in Brooklyn because I'm actually going to a ultrasound, my second trimester ultrasound. So I was like, oh no, it's going to be on the same day. We already rescheduled, but I was like, maybe I could go. So it worked out well. And
I know that you've been you've been a doula and involved in that world for some time already.
Right,
So
yeah.
now it's your turn, right?
Yeah. So I know a little bit about it.
Well,
but-
like I said, I've got like lots of baby stuff downstairs. So after we're done, we can go down there.
Sure,
like
yeah.
I got like bags of clothes that we're trying to get rid of. So
Okay.
you could take a look. All right, I think we're good to go. You feel comfortable?
Yeah, I think so.
All right. Well,
Comfortable as I can be.
I see. Well, I did have to rein you in to do this with me a little bit. You're not one to put yourself out in the public. I know you were like anonymous on Yogadork for a couple years, right?
Yeah, for a long time.
Hmm.
I actually, I mean, just the whole reason for that was because, I mean, my personality in general is not that like showy and out there, but it was also just because it wasn't a personal blog at all. It wasn't really about me. So that was the point of being anonymous, and I don't know. And then it was kind of fun for a while because people didn't know.
Nobody knew. And everybody thought you were a guy.
They thought I was a guy. And
which
that
is
was
really
actually,
cool.
I enjoyed that because, I don't know, it's because I'm in the whole, like, you know, women's world as well.
And
so
we'll get to that. We'll get to
it was
that. Yeah.
interesting.
Oh, that's totally interesting, right?
Yeah.
Well, you know, I guess I want to say that it's so, for me, like sitting here with you now, I feel like we've been friends for so long.
Yeah.
But like this is only the second time, I think, or like third time we've ever been in the same room
Yeah.
together.
Yeah.
It's always just been through Yogadork, because very early on, you know, for me, I don't know if you know this, but when I first started kind of formalizing my posts into blogs, like when blogs first happened, because it was just like a newsletter that I sent out,
Yeah.
you know, like the early posts. But once like WordPress hit and it became like blogs and I shifted it over there, I was like, well, where are the outlets? You know, where can I put this now? And there was only really two in that moment that had arisen. There was Elephant Journal, which had been a magazine prior and then
yeah.
like jumped online. But that was on the West Coast. And honestly, I posted a few things there, like one or two first. And, you know, it was just like dealing with the editors was like, it wasn't very personal. Like, I don't know. It wasn't like the best
there were
experience.
editors?
Even back then, well, like there was, like even back then, like now
know, it
there's
was
like,
very- yeah.
now like it's like a total, I don't even deal with it now. But like back then it was like, okay, so they posted it. It was cool. But then I found Yogadork was like this like cooler New York equivalent or something. And you got back, like, I don't know, like the one person I needed to speak to got back to me.
Yeah.
And you were super cool, and you've been posting my stuff up there every month ever since.
Yeah. Well, I was happy that you reached out because I enjoyed your writing. I mean, I kind of was aware of the New York scene and who you were, and I think, and I do forget the first one that you put up because it was, I don't know, maybe it was something topical at the time, or it was.
I mean, there was one I know that was like called "Screw Union with the Divine." That was one early on. Or no, Hanumanasana is overrated.
Maybe
There was like a catchy one where I
Yeah.
had like, I wrote a thing about like this picture of someone doing Hanumanasana in Yoga Journal.
Okay.
But it was like, it
Definite.
wasn't too long after like Yogadork, maybe 2000, somewhere like when did Yogadork start? 2009?
I mean, it started 2008 is when I started it, but I didn't really like. I mean, I was temping at the time. That's when I started. I did my yoga teacher training, and I was like, I want to start a website because there isn't really anything that like I want to read so much about like stuff going. I think it was like the training that kind of inspired the interest in like what's going on in the actual yoga world, not just like teaching stuff, and you know, it's like more of a cultural news type topics, you know. So I started it, and then I was temping at the time because I was like, I don't know if I should teach yoga. And I was trying to figure out what I was doing, and that was 2008, and so it's been going. But yeah, like 2009, 2010.
Yeah, so
Kind of.
2009 is, I believe, when I first sent you something. And then it's just every month ever since.
Yeah.
And then it just
Has it been that long? That's crazy.
I know.
That's crazy.
And then it seems like even longer, but yeah, like that long. And so we always have like a little monthly, here's
Yeah.
my thing. And you're like,
Yeah.
hey, thanks. And then sometimes there's a little note there.
Right.
But that's been our connection. And what's so kind of interesting to me now is things have changed so much on the internet.
So much,
And I just
yeah.
remember there was a time when Yogadork was kind of like blew up, was huge.
Well, what's funny is that the blog started right around when Twitter started too, and it was crazy because that helped to kind of like get an audience and get people interested in a much more exponential way at the time, because yoga, like Twitter was so new, and like yoga communities were just starting to form in there, and people were like, oh, like joining, Twitter, like how to be on Twitter now, and finding, so that was like finding a community that way was pretty cool and pretty interesting, and different things, obviously popped up that happened in the yoga world.
So talk about like when it first started, like there wasn't that many people on there. Like when did you first start to notice that like a lot of people were coming on the site?
People would start commenting. I don't know. It was probably around 2009 when Twitter was happening. And
so did it was it kind of like a popular destination right away? Because like, I don't know. I didn't get to see the stats, So I don't know like how it was coming in, but there was at one point where, I would put something on Yogadork and it would be a huge bump, and massive comment threads. And I'm just wondering, like, did that happen all at once or did that happen gradually?
I think it happened gradually, and then the John Friend thing kind of skyrocketed, into another
And
realm.
I know there was like a New York Times piece where it referenced some kind of like pop culture scoop you had about Lady Gaga having a class somewhere, and then that getting posted out on like all these news media sites.
Yeah, I take it actually that helped as well, because the other media, big mass media, started to get more interested in yoga too and wanting to write about it. So they would contact blogs that they found, like they wanted to find people in the community. So I would get I still get contacted a lot for for comments or, different things. Some of this stuff I have something to say about, and some of it it's really like beyond my scope of expertise. But and then I actually got a profile in the New York Times in 2011. That was
so that must have done a lot for the site.
That was huge. That was like, you want to do a profile on me? Are you kidding?
Yeah.
Sure. Okay. So that was like blew my mind at the time. And that was a huge
And that's sort
deal.
of like when you came out of anonymity, right?
A little bit.
You had to, because in the article it said that. Like I remember it was like, well, you kind of coming out. It's had your name there.
Had my picture was the back. Well, I had a little photo shoot. It was so hot in Central Park. Great photographer, really sweet guy, and he's like, well, you can't. You're not showing your face. So what do we do? Did some headstands. I ended up doing like triangle pose, Trikonasana, with my back to the camera.
I see. You specifically said you didn't want your face to be shown.
Yeah. And they were like,
see, that's crazy.
Okay.
You got to be featured in the New York Times, and you're like, I'll do it, but you can't show my face?
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. See, that kind of makes you the perfect person, in a way, to have the site. Because
I guess,
Because if it was me, I would be, like, I get in trouble on this podcast all the time because I'm, like, interjecting myself too much. You know what I'm saying? Like, that tendency in me benefits me in certain ways, but doesn't in others.
Sure, yeah. Well,
so your tendency to like not want to take the focus.
Yeah.
So I think that serves you.
Well, it definitely serves my personality. I mean, I think writing is more of my, form of communication rather than speaking. That's why I held out so long on doing this with you.
I see.
Part of it. But no, I mean, I like to take my time and write. And I think sometimes I'm not like and this is not a knock on type A people, but I'm not a type A person. So I like to take my time and like be a little bit more, relaxed when I respond to things. So that actually doesn't work to my advantage.
That's really smart for common threads.
It is, but it isn't when like people email me and I take like 4 days to write them back and everyone gets mad at me because they're like, why are you taking so long? But yeah, I like to just kind of like take my time, and I like to, I get too anxious if I'm forced to do stuff quickly.
I hear you. And I never forced you to do anything. But that's, again, it's been a very free, easy relationship for that reason. I've always like, here's a thing. If you want it, you can use it,
Yeah.
And so I guess my next thought is there was a time, like I said, when it really kind of blew up huge. And then you were like, you could sell ads on the site. So like at some point it did kind of make some money for you?
Yeah, I mean, I make some money from it. It's not, I mean, I used to explain it as like my full-time job that I don't get paid for, as if it were a full-time job. So, I mean, I really I made it my full-time job.
But there was a time where it seemed like maybe you were making some money. Am I wrong?
Yeah, I mean,
Were like
I'm
click ads were like really working, and Because I remember like going on and you had like a whole system, you had a whole thing, and now it's different. But like,
well, I actually so I had a different setup and then I switched it. I'm kind of like, ads are like a thorn in my side because it's like I hate the term necessary evil, but it sort of is. And it's not evil at all. I mean, when it's stuff that you feel like you want to help, support. So I prefer to work with like book publishers and, people and companies that are doing good things that I think are contributing, doing good things.
You don't want any sake
yoga
ads on Yogadork? I saw your piece that came out today, right? We could get to that later. I just got ahead of ourselves. But so you're picky.
Yeah, I want to be, because it would be hypocritical to, just kind of like let it all, open it up to anyone. And I don't know. It's my site, so I can do what I want with it. I don't have to answer to anyone. So, I mean, it just, I try to lead the site as, my own ethics and morals and, how I would want to see it as a reader. Mm-hmm. And so the choices I make are based on that. So I try to keep it within those lines of credible and integrity,
Well, I mean, I've put out some like controversial things here or there, and you are always game.
Well, I don't think there's anything wrong with controversy. I mean, especially, unless it's just for controversy's sake.
No, I've tried to be thoughtful,
You're extremely thoughtful. That's why, I love posting your articles up, because it's like, I read it and I kind of like see your wheels turning. Like,
to me, like, I feel
your brain
like,
working.
In a way, I almost feel like you kind of know me, like, as a writer better than most anybody else. You know what I mean? Like, you've seen it's changed over the years. You know? Yeah.
I've seen your thought process kind of like, especially, with your kids and everything too, just kind of, and your studio and New York City, especially, just that whole, and the way that the whole landscape of yoga has changed and is changing continually.
Well, I think that your interest in being able to see, like, what's the broader yoga world going on, like, now that yoga was booming, because it was like this boom time, you were like, well, where's the yoga news? And I was like, I want to be the Frank Rich, whatever, you know what I mean? Like, so Yogadork was like, okay, that's where I got to be,
Yeah.
So now I guess what I want to go now is there have been these times where Yogadork's become like a fulcrum point for like one issue or another. And you specifically mentioned the John Friend thing. So let's talk about when that happened. Like, you got like an anonymous tip or something? Like, what? How did you come by? Because you were, I think it had already been put out on some website, but when you put it out, that's when everybody else found out about it.
Well, it was put out on the website. A website was created by someone, the tipster, the anonymous source, and but it was someone that had worked. It kind of came out later who this person, kind of like how this person was related to him and John Friend and the whole machine, the Anusara world. But yeah, at that time, I guess I built up enough of an audience, and it was kind of like a kind of a rebel blog in a sense. So people were like, oh, well, this is a place where I can, share this information, and this will be like respected, and it'll, be posted or shared. So yeah, that was a little crazy, because I was still a little green, still a little wet behind the ears.
And then it went crazy. Well,
I was threatened by the Anusara camp. And
what do you mean? Like,
they wanted me to take it down. I was going to be sued and everything, even though I was not in the wrong at all.
Yeah.
Because I didn't share anything that wasn't already posted.
It's public.
So when I checked it with all my journalism friends.
Did you like check out? You're like, are they going to get me?
I did. I was like in, crisis mode, because I felt it was important to share out. But, I also wanted to like protect the people involved and protect myself and be responsible with it. But I had kind of heard some weird things happening before this person brought the information. So there's just stuff that was just like weird and not right. And so that I witnessed myself and like heard from other people and other USARA teachers. And then you heard all these teachers that were like quitting on USARA, and there was something was bound. It was like ready to break.
It was a huge story that then became like a national story, not just a yoga news story, but like a regular news story.
Yeah, like a huge. And I think it set, I mean, not what Yogadork did, but like the story itself, what happened, to set like a huge precedent and almost like open the eyes of a lot of people that were in the yoga world that hadn't, realized that this was something, because corruption happens everywhere. There's
it's like
especially in yoga where you keep hearing about all this stuff.
Oh gosh!
But it's like, I think at that time people weren't ready for it. It wasn't.
Well, maybe that also coincides with just like the proliferation of the internet and like the way, just like in politics in general now, you can't. Everything gets recorded and gets put out there.
News travels really fast.
Yeah, so I do think that marked a turning point in terms of the yoga world doing that, where like people during their office jobs can have websites put out stuff, and like that becomes national news. And then that's kind of when Babarazzi happened.
He kind of came, I think he came a little later. Yeah. Maybe kind of like towards the tail end of. He
picked up. I remember him sort of picking up from there. Now, did you guys get along? Was there like.
There wasn't really much communication between the two of us.
But you were aware of what they were doing.
Sure, yeah. And I appreciated it. I mean, I was happy that there was like someone else. Like they did kind of getting a little more like raunchier than I was.
They called you the Gawker of the yoga world, but I think Babarazzi was more of.
They were like Gawker, like when Gawker was new and like
not now.
Like,
yeah,
really, because Gawker's leveled off a little bit. I mean, I appreciate Gawker honestly, but when Gawker was like at their height. And just really, letting it loose. But yeah, they did a good job of like calling out a lot of stuff in the yoga world that was necessary to be said.
I thought so too.
I don't know why. I mean, I honestly don't even know the story of like why they quit.
Yeah, I think he was on like another podcast. I should get him on. I probably get him on. But I think that it was kind of good. It almost like, there's like a Coke and a Pepsi. There was like, it was good that there was other things out there. But I guess the blogosphere did sort of, the heyday did season, you know what I mean? Like it's changed now. I mean, I'm still active and you still have the site.
Yeah, it's different. It's a different world now. I mean, I'm actually kind of like happy for that.
Yeah.
Because it's like almost like less pressure and you have a little bit more freedom instead of like all eyes on you. You can kind of take that space to like do what you want to do. I don't know. It feels a little less pressure.
I agree. But that's a result of not being able to command as much,
Yeah. But
attention.
That's also my personality.
I know. See, you don't want the attention. I want the attention. You don't want the attention.
I'd rather be like the alt blog that people read, on a daily or weekly basis, and they're like, oh, what's this other perspective? Instead of being, it doesn't have to be like the blog.
No. Well, that's a nice sentiment, and people still go to that blog, right?
Yeah. I mean, I've.
You've got a lot of other projects that you do now too.
I do have a lot of other projects, but yeah.
So let's talk. Let's talk about some of those. We'll come back to Yogadork stuff, but let's talk about some of the other projects you do, because I know that you, for a long time, you've had this TASCbar place, right?
Yeah.
And what's that? That's just like a space that you have that you rent out for people to work out of.
It's my living space. So
that's where you live.
Yeah.
And then you rent it out also.
Well, so I'll tell you this story. So my partner and I, is my fiance. I hate that word. That's why sucking
He's
my
your
teeth
fiance.
In it.
You guys are going to get married. You could say partner.
He's my partner. So he's an artist, but he also teaches and he does some after schools. He's got a social work background. So he does some after school programs, but as an artist, he works at home a lot, and I work at home for mostly everything except for I was teaching yoga. I don't teach yoga as much right now. But we would travel. I live in East Harlem, And we would travel down to the West Village to this one cafe all the time because we'd spend all day there, and they had great vegan food, which I love, and coffee and Wi-Fi. And it was a big place, and we would sit and we'd just spend like hours. We'd get lunch and dinner there. And we were coming back one time. We're like, wouldn't it be cool if we had some place like close by? That would be really nice. And then we thought, well, why don't we set up the apartment, the space, because it's kind of this weird lofted space, open living room. We set that up as a workspace, and then we could have like events there, and we could have people come during the day and work there while we're working there. So that was the whole idea. That was like 4 years ago. So it is. I mean, it's a workspace. I work there. Right now it's in transition because we're like redoing some stuff in there. So it's like a little out of service right now. But we still have events and stuff. We have like artist talks, and we've had comedy nights there, and obviously parties. But yeah, it's been like kind of awesome because it just, I mean, it's art. We wanted to create a great workspace for us, and then invite people in.
And
locally.
Did it catch on, or did people rent space there?
Yeah, I mean, we have several events. We've had art gallery openings there, and we've had last year, for the past like 2 years, we've had people come in and work during the day. So it's really just sort of like a 10 to 6 kind of thing.
And do they just like pay you hourly, or like how does that
it's
work?
like a drop in. It's like cheap.
Yeah.
It's like $10 a day. I mean, it's like cheap.
Wow, that's cool. So like instead of going to the coffee shop,
Instead of going to the coffee shop, yeah, you come in. We have cats, so you can be allergic to cats.
See, that's the other thing. That's another thing that's funny. Not funny,
It's a
but
cat
maybe
cafe.
funny because you post cat stuff
Yeah.
on Yogadork.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like a cliche thing, right? Cat photos on the internet.
Sure.
But you're not just, you're active in like animal rescue. Isn't that right?
Yeah,
So like you can back up the cat photos or something.
Well, I have 3 cats of my own,
Yeah.
and I've always been a cat lover, but I didn't. I was in New York City for over a decade without a cat. I mean, I grew up with cats, and then I, settled into my apartment where I'm in right now, and I was like, I want to get a cat. So we happen to have the animal control 2 blocks away, so that's dangerous. But so got a cat 4 years ago, and then got another cat, and then picked up a cat from the street, and then last year, because East Harlem has a lot of cats. There's gardens around. New York City is lots of parks and gardens, but and alleyways. But I would see stray cats all the time, and I even brought in a few stray cats, brought them to the ASPCA. But then I decided there's this one garden that's close by to me that had like 30 some cats. And people were feeding them. People feed them every day, but they weren't doing this. It's like trap, neuter, return, it's called. So you like trap them, you get them fixed, neutered, spayed, and then you return them back if they're feral cats. But if they're friendly, you try to find them homes.
I see.
So I still have a few cats to find homes. So
I
anyone
see.
listening, if you want a cat, I
see.
still have
So
cats.
wait, you set all that up? Like
Yeah,
you
it's
personally take all
crazy.
those 30 cats to get neutered and decide whether they're feral or not?
You set up through the ASPCA. They do it for free.
Yeah.
But the whole trapping and all that stuff, it's kind of like it's
See, that's
exhausting.
what I mean. Like you work for cats. You're allowed to post cat photos.
Yeah.
There's other people who do it. I don't think they should, but you get to.
Thank you. Thanks. Yes, I get
You're out
the
there
official
working
badge.
for cats. You're allowed to post
I
cat
have
photos.
cats on my shirt right
oh,
now.
you do, don't you?
Yeah. Yeah, I know. My friends, I am a proud cat lady. They call me cat
Nice.
lady, and I accept. It's fine.
All right, so the other stuff that I know that you're into, you also, not so long ago, you have 2 other things. You have salted scarlet,
Yeah.
scarletry.
Scarlet Tree, yeah. We made up that word.
You also have Cycledork.
Yeah.
So what was salted
I know, it's hard to
scarletry?
say. It's hard to say.
Yeah.
Well, I started that site with a friend of mine, actually from high school. We're still friends. He lives in New York. We wanted to start a site together, and it's a feminist site. It's a women positive site, female positive in general. So we started that a few years ago. It's been kind of on hiatus because he's transitioning, got his jobs, different things going on. And I've got different things going on, but it's still kind of there.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't posted a lot of new stuff lately.
And that was because, like, it's not a yoga thing. It's something else that you're interested in. So you
Right.
felt like you needed a different site for it.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
It's a separate thing. I mean, there were some things that would cross over, obviously, but it was more about like kind of female news and like positive stuff that's going on. And
well, that actually is more and more
messed up stuff.
like yoga territory, right?
Yeah, it's becoming, it's
more
all
and
like
more trauma sensitivity and
true. Yeah.
And then you also have Cycledork, which is about periods.
Yeah.
Is that right? Women's menstruation.
You can say it. It's okay. Yeah. It's a period positive website. It's the whole idea is to, our little tagline is undo the taboo. So, it's not a subject that a lot of people want to talk about in the world and society. So, and because of that, there are a lot of issues that come out of that. Young girls, don't want to talk about it, don't learn about their options, don't learn about things. Boys don't learn about things. And so, the whole idea is to kind of undo the shame surrounding it and actually like bring it to a conversation where people feel comfortable about it, and then make it better in general, kind of make it a better,
I agree. I don't.
What do you think about when you think about period? Like
I can't speak to menstruation at all.
You're
but
surrounded by girls now.
I do. I do have a whole household full of women. But what I will say about that is, like, even women I know who are very progressive, that's not like a topic.
Yeah.
That's freely talked about, like poop or something. You know what I mean? Like, those are like areas we don't talk about so much, and there's all this shame around them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that makes a lot of sense. And I have young daughters right now, and so
It's
that
gonna come up.
What's that?
It's gonna come up.
Oh, I'm sure. It's like that's mom's territory, but I should be educated too.
But that's the whole thing is like,
Yeah.
You obviously haven't experienced it yourself, but there might be something that you could offer, or what you can do as a dad is kind of make it a safe space and a welcoming space so that they can talk about it to you, so that they don't feel like, I can't talk to dad about this because, but.
Well, my daughter doesn't want to talk to me about anything, but she could if she wanted to.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, that also does come out of work. Like, you're a doula. Is that?
Yeah.
Are you trained?
I'm a birth
trained?
doula. Mm-hmm.
And so when did that happen for you?
So it actually all comes from a yoga thing. And I started the Cycledork site because I've always been kind of curious about the menstrual cycle and women's cycles, and kind of like, even when I was younger, before I even got my period, I was like, wow, that's kind of cool and neat. And like, I only learned what I know from like my 5th grade health class, and there's not really much else, not many resources out there to learn about this stuff. So when I was in college, I was going through like, the early 20, like, emotional roller coaster. And I was like, why am I so, full of rage at this time? And that's when I was doing yoga more too. And yoga actually helped me to learn more about myself and kind of investigate more, like, what's going on in my body. And then I was doing more research about my cycle, and I realized that I could sort of navigate my cycle better than what I was doing, and keeping track of patterns. I started tracking my cycle and my emotional states at different times and my cravings, like all kinds of stuff, and my physical condition. Just on my calendar, Google Calendar, before they had period apps and all that. Period apps were like the new thing. So like yoga is really like a huge part of that, because it helped me like get into my body and tune in a little bit more, and want to like investigate and research. But the doula thing started because I did my 300-hour training, yoga teacher training. What year was that? 2010, I guess.
So wait, where did you do your first teacher training?
Yogaworks.
You did a Yogaworks 200
I did
hour.
Both Yogaworks.
And then you did a 300 hour.
Yes.
And that was 2010, you said?
Yeah. My favorite teachers were teaching, actually, the 300 hours. Her first one, it's Paula Lynch at the time, librarius.
Okay.
Now, so I did the 300 hour, and we had a final project, and I was teaming up with 2 other gals in my training group, and we were like interested in bringing yoga to young girls and like helping to boost their confidence and kind of give them something, to boost their self-esteem and empower them. And at that time I was kind of thinking like periods up, because like when you reach a certain age as a boy or a girl, or at adolescent, you kind of like, you're trying to figure yourself out. And I think girls who get their periods like clam up even more, like they kind of like get a little like I don't know, society helps with that too, but they kind of, they just don't want to express themselves as much or don't know how to express. I know, trying to understand their bodies.
I have a memory that just popped in my brain. Where it was like I was in elementary school, okay? And it was like, I think like at the age when young girls start to get their periods.
Yeah.
And we were on the playground and some young girl had gotten her period for the first time. And we could all see that there was blood
Right.
on her pants. And it was like a huge thing. And that's my memory of it.
Yeah.
And like, it was like, oh no, she wasn't ready. And I don't know, it was like, there was a lot of like fear around it.
Yeah. That's fair because it's so like, you don't want to talk about it. No one wants to talk about it.
Yeah.
And girls
it's related
feel
to
ashamed.
sex.
Yeah. Oh, you're like a woman now.
Yeah.
So there's so much.
Yeah.
There's so much. And like, ooh, weird. And,
If you are hearing this message, then you're listening to the free version of J. Brown Yoga Talks. To hear the rest of our conversation, please subscribe to Podcast Premium at jbrownyoga.com/premium.